Welcome to the No BS Short-Term Rental Podcast, an unfiltered look into the global vacation and short-term rental industry.
I'm Mateo Bradford.
And I'm John Stokinger.
And this is our podcast. We bring the right people to the table at the right time, giving you an inside view and take on the short-term rental industry like no other podcast can.
Good morning, Mateo. How are you? Actually, you know what? Good afternoon to you.
I mean, I'm in a secret location, and can't really be giving out my information right now. No, I'm just kidding.
Well,
afternoon, or should I say, Buenos Aires.
There you go. There you go. You last day of your trip?
Yeah. Out here, live and direct from Florence, beautiful Florence, Italy. Wish I could show you the background, but I don't know really a beautiful background or waste any time. So get to our guest today.
Well,
things to talk about, a couple of announcements to make, like we always do about this time.
Yeah. Season 4, episode 2, our 92nd episode. We have a great guest. There's so many questions I have. I'm going to go ahead and let you go ahead. And that's a cool bottle, by the way. Looks like you're drinking out of wine. But
well, in Europe, man, they don't really do a lot of the plastic. Hold on.
But I'll let you go ahead and introduce our guest today.
We are lucky to have this day, my friend, my brother, who I have had the opportunity to know for some time now, who I actually met in Italy, in Lake Como at the Vacation Rental World Summit. Was that 2018, 2019? It had to be 2018. Yeah, it was.
We met on Marco Island, and then caught up in Como. Yeah, right before. Yeah.
Oh, it was Marco Island first, then it was. It was. And it's funny because I actually have an embarrassing story about, and I actually have an embarrassing story about Marco Island that has to do with us. But my brother, my friend, the one and only CoHost Expert, an extraordinary, great overall individual. If you know him, you love him. He's got friends all over the world, great personality, someone you love to sit down, have a cigar with, talk business with. My friend, Mr. Robertin Nunez. Welcome to the No BS Short-Term Rental Podcast, brother.
Yeah, with an introduction like that of No BS, I'm super honored. I love it. Thank you.
Hey, man, tell me when I start lying. Right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Our paths have crossed a couple times. Our paths used to cross back actually when I was in payment processing in the CHPA days. I'd be at, I think our paths cross in Puerto Rico at a CHPA conference there. Our paths conference a few other times. And then most recently at the Book Direct show, the three of us were down in Miami last year. So, we've known each other for a little bit, just not as, I don't have that camaraderie.
Well, days you were in too. Your path when you were at track.
Yeah. We've been wanting to get you on for a bit now. I know you and I chatted probably a year ago about getting you on, and then for whatever reason, it didn't align. But we're excited to have you join us. A big thing that we do on this pod is, we like to talk about your story and and what drives you. And right now, we know you're in Philly. You live in Philly, or you live in New York, but you're also in Philly. You spend some time in Miami. You spent some time during COVID where we chatted actually over a call during early COVID, and you were down. Where were you? Aruba. See, pretty good.
Aruba. Yeah, good job.
It's surprising. Sometimes my mind surprises me as well, and I can remember shit like that. Talk to us. How did you get into hospitality? Like, what was that thing that made you go, this is the direction for me? Because you kind of have your fingers in a lot of different things. And we want to talk about, your exposure and what you're bringing to the space. We know you speak at a lot of different conferences, but what was that first thing that you go, you know what, this is what I do. This is who I am.
That's a great question. Well, thanks for having me on, first of all, right? Good to stay here at this chair having coffee and a cigar like Mateo with the president earlier. So I like that. That changes the whole flow of how we just kick it. I've been in the hospitality industry since 2002 because I used to own an entertainment sports travel company. So we only service corporate travel and artists, music, fashion, and sports. And then I got into real estate because we're a real estate family, and we purchased some properties here in Philadelphia, New Jersey, and other cities. And then in 2013, a friend of mine named Carmen said to me, "Hey, why don't you Airbnb?" And we're only buying buildings, so we're not even into that space. I had closed the travel agency down, and I said, the question changed my life. I was like, "What's that?" And then she told me, and I looked it up, and I'm like, "This is interesting." That's 2013. It was already out for a while. I put my apartment up as a listing because I was doing a lot of back and forthing and a book. And then, one booking, two bookings, three bookings. And then I'm like, oh, this works. But the beauty of it is we owned already. So then we just said, well, let's try some of our units. We did the arbitrage thing, but I'm like, we own some stuff. So we just started converting some of our units and then never looked back. That was really the entry point into the STR and midterm space. But I was already in the hospitality space prior to that, and then I just took some years off, 7 years from 7 to 13. Yeah. So I took like 6 years off and then I got into it in 13 in this reference. And then since then, it's just been life changing.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned Airbnb because, I'd probably say it's 75% of the people's entry story starts with it's an exposure to an Airbnb. Our guest that comes out this week, actually season 4, episode 1 that comes out this week, it is his exposure was through staying in an Airbnb in Austin, and it ended up being like a hippie commune. But that's what got him into short-term rental, and it was like an experience, but it was Airbnb, like, and your story isn't original with that regard. It's an exposure to something new, and at your time, it wasn't necessarily new. It'd been around for a little bit, but it was new to you, and you're like, "Oh, fuck. Wow." Yeah, but it, like, and then Airbnb seemed to trigger something in people's minds, like the ability that how and I want easy is the wrong choice of words, but at the same time, it's also the right choice of words because they had a system in place that you didn't
That's what
have
it was. That's what it was. I mean, for me as an owner, because we were housing individuals in apart hotels and multi complex, they just helped us realize how simple it was to just onboard those people to your place. And I think that they pitched a good image on or a good idea on saying people will stay at your place. Like that's what, because when I did it, like, all my friends were like, who the hell's going to pay to stay in your place? Who's going to pay to stay in your house? And, of course, my older traditional folks were like, well, what if they take the TV? And I'm like, nobody's taking my TV. But, well, we did have a TV taken during one of our journeys, but so they just made it, they just helped us deliver the message that, hey, people are doing it, right. And it's just more comfortable. But, since we had some experience before that, it was an easier fit for me to just convert existing rental units into short term and midterm, but always keeping corporate and midterm on the front because I come from that space. So, and it's been our most solid success up until today.
I love it. Talk to us about the corporate housing. Like mostly who we have on this show is, I'd say, 99% of who's been on the show is not corporate housing. So, we know what corporate housing is, but in what is the difference for you for our audience, those that are listening, that those, I think there's a great meld and there's a great hybrid model. And obviously you're showing that could work. And you're starting to see a few people that are kind of are straddling the corporate housing slash mid to long term stay slash short term rental, like kind of bringing it all together and making it work. Why, tell us, what corporate housing is in your eyes, and why do you feel that more are not doing it the way you
Yeah.
are?
All right. So great question on the eve of, we just went live yesterday with livingquarters.net, which is our corporate, shameless plug, right? Just our corporate travel website to
Mhm.
consolidate the answer to your question. The reason, to me, corporate travel is business and business travel. Your company needs something, our company fulfills it, or we become the conduit to fulfill it. Business to business travel. Some people think that if you an executive of a company or somebody's traveling for business books your place on one of the OTAs, you're doing corporate travel. That's not corporate travel. It's business to business travel, meaning the best part of all is sales. You have to literally either provide a platform where they're comfortable to book it or get on the phone or email and convert the party into a reservation. And the OTAs and even just the way people operate the past 7 to 10 years, people have forgotten or don't want to get into the space of selling. They because there's this hidden negative connotation with sales. But if we're in business, if you're not selling, you have to do it. So corporate travel is businesses seeking travel accommodation or travel services, and then the vendors and the suppliers of that. And that's what corporate travel is to me and to our organization here. That also comes with sales and interaction with the individuals. And the OTAs have made it so easy to just sit back and not interact with anybody that it actually created a massive space for those people who do want to, because there's a lot of my clients, they will not even book on an OTA. They can't. The liability is too big for them to send their executives and their CEOs or their teams to a place without even really vetting it or knowing that they have somebody on the line that they can respond to. So it's made the fact that people aren't doing it made it great for us.
So, but that's typical. So this is typically a hotel space though, right? Like when people think about business travel, and I know it's broad ranging, right? Because this is what you're doing in that space that you're fulfilling was usually when people think about travel in hotels, right? Like here in Italy right now, right? Like the majority of the people that I've met here that are on business trips are staying in hotels, right?
Mhm.
Like, short-term rentals, not vacation rentals, not villas, right? They're staying in hotels in that space. And when most people think about that, like, oh, I'm traveling for work, they think about the name brands. I'm not gonna drop their names, but that's typically where they've been in this space. How have you carved a niche, and how have you expanded on this area to bring our industry into that lane in a way that's more palatable for them? Because, you know, that you've gone from like the co-host thing, right? To
Mhm.
and being in that co-host space to now transitioning to full blown, working with traveling professionals of all sorts to bring them into our space. Like when did that switch happen? When did that light switch happen? And why this direction? Because it's not easy, right? Like it's still a lot of convincing and educating and other things that you have to do to get people to understand why this is going to work for them.
Okay. So it's the hotel space model, but since it's corporate travel and it's business to business, companies are not also looking at their bottom lines, right? They don't want to put teams or families or individuals just in hotels. Number one, all the underlying expenses that come with it. Two,
Mhm.
people don't want to live in hotels with the whole explosion of the short-term rental world. People now realize there's an option. They can travel with their families.
It's a longer length of stay too.
The longer length of stay, right? So they don't want to go the hotel route. They're just choosing not to go the hotel route. When in our case, for example, our clients are workforce housing. So construction companies will send 17 guys out for 60 days to go build, part of a bridge. They're not staying in a hotel. They're doing 5 in a house, times 3 houses, 4 houses. We just ran a major project for the thing that happened in Georgia, the senators race.
Mhm.
Right. So we actually represent.
Unfortunately, yes, I do. I never want
Yeah.
to see a political ad again.
Yeah,
So
that was
yes,
that was crazy. Yeah.
thank you.
Well, actually, we accommodated probably, I don't know, it might have been like 700 nights of teams up there on the campaign trail. So they're not staying
Mhm.
in hotels either. Things of that nature. So it is a hotel space model, but with like John said, longer length of stay and with more amenity perks that people can use while saving the company's money. So that's why more people are leaving. And with all the marketing and advertising that's happened over the past couple of years, it is just understandable to stay in an apartment or in an apart hotel or a multi-unit residential or house. Is it harder? No, it's not harder because this is what we do. It's hard for those who aren't in the space. Like somebody running a podcast, maybe, what your guys doing is like, man, how do I ever do this? But this is your passion. You do this. So it's not hard for us to convert reservations into sales or convert clients to use our services all year long. It's
Well,
not
it's a network.
because that's our core. Yeah.
You've already built
Yeah.
this network, and it's built on trust. We're talking trust, and we've been talking. It's been a recurring thing that was happening over
Mhm.
episodes here. Like you've built a network. You have it's business to business. These businesses trust you. These corporations trust you, or they trust other corporate housing providers, and they go, "We use this company. We use your company. We use this company." And the cool thing about the corporate housing world from when I was kind of dabbling in it or like a vendor in that is that, just like short-term rentals, you have your competition, your competitors, but you also kind of work together in a way where,
Mhm.
and I see you do it a lot,
Yes.
networking on social, and I want to applaud you for this. You're like, hey, I need like 1,000 nights for in this city, and I only have so many. Help me out. So there's a lot of back
Yeah.
scratching, which I see, and I applaud you for doing that because you're all competing against each other for the same clients, but at the same time, to get these big fish and to go ahead and support these large, whatever it is, it's like in an event or construction or whatever, you all come together to reach the like a common goal, which
That's a great.
I like that
Mm.
about corporate house, and that's also what I like about STR,
Right.
because
Yeah.
like everyone, it's like head to head, like knock 'em, drag out, in a community. But at the same time, there's certain, there's an equilibrium where hey, I'm at full capacity, and I know so and so down the street has some units available. Hey, why don't you go ahead and check them out? They'll take good care of you.
That's a great breakdown because I've actually called Mateo a couple of times and he linked me with a couple of individuals. And that's really because our clients are demanding more inventory from us than we have. So, and that message you're talking about, John, about, hey, I have these many nights that I need. Let me tell you something. I was literally in Miami. I get the call from our client. I'm sitting there and I'm like, how am I going to fulfill these 5,000 nights? Because I know we didn't have it. And I put it on LinkedIn and people responded and we booked. We got the reservation, and then they made another request, which was in Reno, Nevada. We're not in Reno, right? We were now, but we weren't at the time. And we made a request, and we booked 90 times. Yeah, I think it was like 2,700 nights off of another operator. They got
Mhm.
theirs, we got ours. Our client was extremely satisfied. So I guess if you were to say it in, you just termed everyone eats. And I'm
Yeah.
very big on everyone eats. I'm not about, not everybody eats because at the end we want to get to the end goal, which is success, booking the property, satisfying the client, and then going on to the next venture.
Absolutely. And it's about a
Mhm.
betterment of the industry. When everyone comes together, whether STR, corporate, mid, whatever we are, when we're still putting out a good word and a good image for the industries, as
Mhm.
opposed to, all this negative connotation that comes because of parties and regulations and all this shit in SCR, like any good publicity we can do and everything that we can come through to and shows the community that hey, these corporations came together, these businesses came together and they helped so and so. It's
Mhm.
a positive thing.
And there's massive opportunity because I know that it's just so easy to go online and click, 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 but wherever you're at. But there's so many companies that are so traditional. I mean, Fortune 500, Fortune 100, that they have entire travel departments that say, this is how we do it. This
Yeah.
is how we've done it for the 150 years we've existed. And this is how we're going to, and they might keep doing it past my lifetime. Why would individuals not set themselves up in that space? Because it is work. It does require work. It does require a team. It does require a system. So we do that. We created it. But it's a massive space. And once they have a bad experience on the click book platforms, they do wind up coming back in this direction. So we actually do see more clients coming in than we actually I think we have been going out, leaving because they're like, well, we've had some bad experiences. We just want to make sure that everything is, accountability is massive, liability is massive. So, we work very hard at making sure trust is super solid.
It's what it's about, right? It's what it's about.
Well, the other part of it too is I think is our, STRs. When you think about the STR space, the alternative accommodation space, whatever you want to call it within this, right? You have vacation rentals, you have, what you would call, your mid or long-term stays within this space, right? But the business acceptance of all of this, right? Like the getting to corporate booking agents and getting to the internal travel, planners at companies, and getting and educating them really as to the benefits of what we have to offer. It seems to be like where you're seeing a lot of success, right? Like really translating the best of what we have, right? Because so many people will say, and they'll say, oh, Airbnbs, how do you Airbnb at business or how do you stay in an Airbnb when they're talking about short term rentals, right? And you're talking about short term accommodations, really. right?
Yeah.
In the being able to bring an industry that's professionalizing, that's, from technology to practices to preferences, right? Because you're also having a business class of traveler now too, that is not wanting to stay in hotels or extended stay hotels or, uncomfortable environments, when you can say, hey, do you want to stay in a, 1 or 2 bedroom apartment for, those 15, 20 days you're out, or however long you're staying within that space? Or do you want to go stay at X brands extended stay suite that nobody wants to stay in for that amount of time, right? Like, and being able to give them that opportunity, and give them, those choices, and even having those choices and have that be viable and get reimbursed for that. Like, that's a culture shift, right? Like, to have it adopted and to have it, and what I love about seeing what you're doing in that space is really working hard to ensure that the industry is prepared for that, right? Not just on the other side of that, right? Like that, yes, the education to the buyer on the other side, but also that the seller, and that our managers and our multifamily property owners and things of that nature are understanding the opportunity, because that's an education piece in and of itself too. Which, talk about that part, because you old school in this multifamily space, old school in that space, they didn't really adopt us very well in the beginning. They didn't really they didn't really accept us with open arms, because they thought it was, oh, this is a hustle. Oh, it's going to be a fad. Hotels are going to win. And nobody really saw that there was actually space for everything and everyone in a way that this could really work to their benefit, until they had occupancy they needed filled, right? Until they saw that, the apart hotel model that was grown and expansive with tools and technology could actually be a benefit to their business. And you were in the front lines of that. Talk to us a bit about that.
Well, people lie, numbers don't, right? So, our owners and operators, building owners were very anti the short term rental because of the media publicity. We all know that game, right? Everyone watching this podcast pretty much gets that. Yet when COVID hit, which was a booster for us, and tenants weren't paying. So first they would say no to us because they were like, no, we got the tenants, they've been with us for years, we don't need this. Then COVID hit and the rent moratorium kicks in and nobody's paying rent. And the good tenant that was paying for years stopped paying. So so we went from having to talk to owners and convert them from no's to maybe to yeses to get properties. So then our phone nonstop ringing during COVID because they're like, take my building, not my unit, take my building because nobody's paying. We're getting these people out some way or another, and we don't want to experience this again. So that rent moratorium actually was an amazing corporate housing and midterm space booster for us because owners took such a hit that they're like, we don't ever want to experience that again. So we have properties where we might be 50 to 70% of the building, and then they'll still keep a couple of people, because they have internal beliefs, like just in case, the theory, but they just don't want to have that experience again. And then we complemented that with saying, we're not short-term rental, we're accommodation with a focus on businesses. Once you tell an owner of a property or chain, we specialize on business and business travel, it reduces that negative message that the media was giving about short-term rentals. Because now they're like, I'm like, they'll ask us, like, who are some of your clients? They'll say, Instagram is a client of ours, Amazon is a client of ours. Now they're just like, these are household names, right? So now they're like, okay, that sounds okay. And be what's the average stay? 30 plus. They're like, okay. So there's not people coming in and out and 15 different people a month. Nope. And then it became easier. So, COVID was a booster to help us get into their face. The education of it is on both sides, right? It's the sellers, us, the operators, knowing that you have to professionalize your business because this is a business. People, this is no more of a side hustle or, some little extra money on the side. If you're doing this as a business, you got to professionalize yourself. And if you're going to professionalize yourself, you got to level up in your services, your accommodations, your response to your clients, what you offer, of course, the famous, your own platform where they find you, and then on the owner side, we spend a lot of time working with our own, things are going well. Most of our business comes from referrals from owners to other owners because they're like, well, how's your portfolio doing? They're like, it's doing great. They're like, oh, we're at 98% rent collection. People are like, how are you at 98%? Because the average is 85. How are you at 98% rent collection? They're like, oh, we use this company. They pay our rent. We deal with one tenant, one payment a month, and they take everything. So owners are referring other owners to use us because of the success ratio. But that success ratio is because we do sales. Like I'm gonna tell you something. It's funny. Like I can't even beat that one. I can't. I'm gonna show you something. So I journal right every day, and in my journal, probably, I don't know, on the top of every line or in the journal, it always says one powerful word. It'll say, praise God, exercise. I have my checklist, my priority list, but always in my every day, it literally said sales. One word, sales, sales. Because every day, like you probably won't see it, but down here somewhere says sales. So, because every day, if you're not bringing in reservation sales every day, then your money's going out. So we work hard at sales, getting clients to reserve, and then we work hard at getting owners to give us quality properties or providing, and keeping that business going. That matter.
Hey, Robertin, I got a question for you. We're talking about evolving. We're talking about meeting the needs of owners, meeting the needs of clients, business to business. When I was more involved in the corporate housing world, the tech was kind of behind compared to like the other verticals. It was behind compared to hotels. It was behind compared to STR, which was behind to hotels at the time. And now I think STR is definitely caught up, maybe even surpassing in some circumstances. But like, is the tech coming along? Is there the right people and the right money like being funded into the corporate housing slash business to business model? I see new startups coming out, like, and I want to ask you about one here in a few minutes, but like, where do you see the tech? Is it where it needs to be, or does it still have a ways to go?
Man, not at all. The answer is no, it's not caught up. And I love that question, right? This is why I really appreciate space and individuals like yourself. And I'm gonna tell you, the short-term rental are like the disruptors. Young company, funded, some VC money, people building that, things out of their studios. They're the disruptors, right, of the housing accommodation space. The corporate rental midterm space are the old school way of this is how we've done it. Now, that's the mentality. The disruptors actually are bringing in information and services and ideas that the corporate and midterm spaces are kind of were opposed to, but now they've loosened up over time because they're like, this is just coming. And some of those services work. The thing I love is that we're in the middle because we operate on both sides of the spectrum. So we take the energy, the resources, the relationships like you guys from the STR space, and then we mesh that into what we have with corporate trust model, right? And then we've proven a successful formula, but there's still a lot of tech that needs to be, actually, I don't even know if tech needs to be created. I think they just gotta accept the idea, change the ideology and not connect the services provided by some of these companies with the short-term negative messages that have been out. Like you were in the corporate rental space for Big John. There's just a old way of doing, good old way of just, and that doesn't apply because major companies have fresh blood coming who understand the STR models of kind of operating. So there's some work to go on the corporate rental space and the midterm rental space. And there's already companies on the short-term rental space that you can use, over. Interesting. The companies in the short-term rental space aren't targeting the midterm rental space or corporate rentals. And these people have thousands of doors. I mean, tens of thousands of doors, some of them I know. But they haven't even made a jump either, right? So it's kind of like there's still a lot of
Why do you think that is though? Is that because you think is it just not on their radar? Is it because like they think it may be already out there? They maybe think that hotel technology or hotel-based technology is probably already targeting this space, or is it just a complete lack of understanding of the space or lack of understanding of the need in the space, I should say?
I was at conferences, Chip one, right? I'll be there next week in New Orleans. Some of the providers of services that are offered on the corporate rental space, on the short-term rental space, the services that they have here will fly right through it. And I think that the operators on the STR space, one, they may not even be aware. They may not think that there's such a huge market. Two, barrier of entry. They get there, they get a couple of no's and go back to sales. They don't push through. So it's like, listen, you want this client who had 2,700 doors in 3 cities, and they're giving you no's because they've always done it this way. You got to keep working on it. So, either they don't know, they're not aware, they don't know how to push through the barrier of entry, and that, they're fixated on a niche market, which is understandable. Maybe the higher ups or the higher ups themselves are saying, this is our target. but there's so much growth on the other side of the spectrum for these companies that aren't making the jump, because I use the software, and the software on the STR space does apply on the corporate rental space.
It's,
Some little tweaks here and there.
yeah, exactly. So I am on day 2 today of the director of sales for a software company in the short-term rental space, right?
Mhm.
Believe me, we're coming. We're gonna figure it out. There's a, because I know what's there, and I know what was being offered, and there's like you guys like a really archaic software, and then you have some up and coming newcomers. What I think you talked about, what not knowing the barriers or not knowing the barriers are like, API things. It's like distribution things. It's small things, but then it comes down to bandwidth. So like, and it's blinders on. These companies in the SCR space have blinders because they're like, oh, things are going so well here. I'm going to have to divert some resources to go ahead and figure out a couple things but by diverting those resources, I'm taking away from, new things for SCR. Well, if they would just pause, look at the bigger scope and look at the doors and look at, I mean, again, one company with 2,700 units, or whatever that may be, it's not small fries. Like this is,
It's not small fries, but don't you think it's opened up, though, John? Like now, like how many we weren't, be honest though, like 2 years ago, were we talking about midterm and long-term stays in STR?
no,
Well, in COVID,
Like pre-COVID, we were not
Before,
talking
no.
about
No,
we
no,
weren't talking
pre-COVID.
about it.
No, it's definitely
Like-
it's definitely opened up. And being honest, there's definitely way more people coming into it. But looking at
Especially in urban markets, though.
yeah, but looking at that landscape though, what's interesting about it is they're coming in ill prepared. They're coming in with a bunch of money, but shitty tech, and not necessarily like executing correctly. They're like have a great idea, but just somebody from the outside coming in with a great idea doesn't make it work. You need to have relations. You need to be able to work through these. You need, alpha and beta testing. You need to have these things to work. Like these things take time and years, and these companies are going to come in. They're going to sprout up really quick, and these tech companies, and they're got a great idea, but if they don't get the adoption, doesn't happen, they're going to get frustrated, and and we see it all day, every day. We've
Mhm.
seen it since we came into the industry. These tech companies that pop up, they're here for 1 or 2 years, and then they're gone because again, let's go back to sales. It wasn't fucking sold. And then,
and you know what? And another thing is, I call it the bomb, right? The bomb meaning each hit. So like back in we used to sell phone cards. When I was younger. So I used to be the marketing director for a phone card company, and they would sell you a $5 card, but the money wasn't in the card. The money was that little fee that they would charge you every time you made a call. That was called the bomb, right?
College,
It was an amazing time. Yeah, it was an amazing time, right? And but now when I translate that thinking into what we are is, remember, it may be 2,700 units, but it's 3 or 4 90-day reservations. So it's
Exactly.
4 reservations in a year.
it's not the
So
doors.
then, right. So some of these companies may say, well, the revenue model might not work for us because we're not getting enough bombs, enough turnover like we do in the short-term rental space. Because 2,700 units in the short-term rental, you might be looking at, XYZ reservation. But on the mid-corporate, you might be looking at nest, but yet there's still a space there.
Yeah, but it's
so
not
that's
necessarily by unit. It's on a, they just price it differently. Like it's a SaaS model based on revenue, not a SaaS model based on units. But whatever the case, still, you just have to rethink
volume.
it. It's just a different model.
Or reframe your approach on how you're going to make that number, that project work for you.
And be competitive. Speaking of, we're talking about, like people coming, disruptors. You mentioned disruptors like coming in.
Mhm.
I was exposed to, and I think it's corporate housing, it's work. It's definitely this company called, are you familiar with a new Techstar company called Work BNB?
Yeah.
Shout out.
Perez.
Yeah. So this cat, I chatted with him. We're going to get him on the podcast at some point to kind of talk about like, how is what he and their team doing, Black founders, total Black, which is super cool. I love that they're coming in and doing their thing. What is the difference? Like, what is he doing or that company Workb doing that's different? Because they're coming out like it's this amazing new like direction for corporate housing, basically, without calling it corporate housing. What is it really that different, or is it just like a rebrand?
I don't know enough about the company to say what are they doing different, but I will say that number one, the fact that they have the name Work B&B automatically, that was a smart tag, to grab that name. I don't know how they're providing their housing, and I don't know if they're doing anything different than corporate housing. We actually called them on that project that we need a housing point in Nevada. We couldn't
Agreed.
get anything from them. They just probably didn't have the inventory available, which is fine. I followed them. I've seen that, they're doing a lot of pushing and, marketing and putting out posts and stuff of that nature, but I don't know enough about, say, what model they represent. I know on our end, our model is to have inventory of doors and the company to use those doors. Like that, if somebody used to say, what does the company do? Like, we house business, we house business travelers. That's as simple as I can say it. And we want to let operators and managers know that if they're professional, like there's a lot of operators and managers who don't know how to get into space. They don't need to recreate the wheel. They could just say, here's the inventory that we have, and we could add them on it and put them out there. But you have to be professional about it. We're not taking fly-by-night operators are just popping up and disappearing because our credibility and our name is on the line, and our client. So how we're B&B is doing it, I don't know. They're doing anything different.
I mean,
That
my
I
understanding, it's more of a, and again, this is mine, not theirs. We're going to get Eves on to go ahead and talk about this, but my understanding, it's actually like short-term rental hosts that are frustrated, and or can't operate the way they used to because of regulations, and now they have to go ahead and only offer longer stays. So like Work B&B is reaching out to these, and there's a focus on making sure it's professional, but I don't think they come from a necessarily a professional background. It's more of a, hey, we're a host. We weren't getting what we thought we were going to get out of Airbnb, because of XYZ. Doesn't matter. They see a great opportunity and it works well together. I think that's the model.
I could see a creation from that. The fact that some of these platforms are uh, ostracized and cut people off, they've actually forced other companies to get created. Because, when you have X amount of people just bumped off of platforms and they're making a living from this, people are going to go and recreate something that's going to work. They're not just going to hang it up because we blew them out. At least if they're smart, right?
100%.
Yeah, you would think
So,
so.
yeah. So companies got, but then again, some people, their entire business was just putting it up on the platform, and so when they get bumped out, then they're out of business. But that's why I think a lot of these new companies are starting to emerge and stuff of that nature.
I love it. I mean, and I think anytime that a company's going to come in and potentially make another company uncomfortable, they're doing the right thing. One way or another, they're doing the right thing because, oh shit, they're getting some inventory share, or they're getting XYZ. It doesn't matter. They're doing something right because they're getting some momentum. And whether it's a social media momentum or it's actual momentum, it doesn't matter. They're still getting momentum.
Right.
In the corporate housing space and midterm, there's so many, it's not like there's so many sectors within the corporate housing, right? So like there's sports, entertainment, management, travel. There's that means that like you're housing entire teams and their families and the staff. You're
Right.
looking at 40, 49 people for 12 nights, 15 or 30 nights. That's a whole squad, right? Then you
Hey,
have
what's that? What's her? I'm
workforce
trying to think of her name. Nicole, in Arizona, big sports. I'm trying to think. Maybe not Nicole.
Witherspoon.
I don't know. It doesn't matter. I apologize for
Okay.
digress.
No. But there's so many. No, but there's so many. There's so many sectors in the corporate housing that you could actually pick one sector and build a whole business and marketing plan around that sector because they're massive. Like workforce housing, phenomenal. You're
Yeah.
talking about 16, 30, 50, 70 people for 30, 60, 90, 120 days. One place they're just there to handle what they got to handle. Military housing, like like and that's a whole great sector. I'm gonna see him at Chipper next week. There's so many sectors and there's so much business. I just see that people stay away from it because it's not delivered.
What's the big thing you're looking at with so this will come out actually on Thursday next week. So the week of CHPA, what
Mhm.
is, is CHPA growing every year, or did it pause for a little bit, and are we poised for some regrowth there? And do you like, what's the big thing other than obviously networking? What's the big thing that you think that you're looking forward to most at in New Orleans?
Oh, absolutely. Well, first of all, I don't know if they're growing or shrinking. I think that they're rethinking. I think there was a very good conversation at the ERC Worldwide, the Employee Relocation Council, last year, right after Vegas, right after VRMA. And they had a panel and they said, things are different, things are changing.
Right.
And they're rethinking their approach on accepting or how to do things a little bit different. And I see that momentum going. I've actually had conversations with our people, they're like, yeah, we've had to implement new models and just open our minds to not just the ways of the good old, old style convention mentality. So they are definitely thinking, getting more creative and opening their thoughts to new ways to do things and new ideas, while still keeping the core value of professionalism at the front, right? I do see that. Our goal as a company is to align ourselves with companies that are housing relocation specialists and let them know we have inventory because right now we're in 49 cities,
Mhm.
right, in the state. So we're going to go out and say we're in 49 cities. So when you're in these cities, there's one source to find everything you need.
Mhm.
And then also to meet professional operators who have XYZ inventory, who want to add the inventory to our portfolio as well, because we have clients. So yeah, so
Well,
that is not
and
networking, but connecting to
Yeah.
actually get a result.
well, I think it works. And like what you said with with that ease, I think like it's interesting to see will corporate come into our space, right? Because we're seeing, new areas of demand, whether it's government and military, workforce housing that, has a tremendous opportunity within our space that Anthony and those guys are taking care of. It's what you're doing within that space. Will we see more of the corporate housing, at VRMAs or at the STR events or in the STR communities, right? Like, will we see that transitioning? They're learning, they're seeing that they need to change, but will we see that, right? Will we see their actions? Will we see them? Or is that still something that is, that you feel is far off in terms of their adoption?
Yeah, it's the way to go because ideology, the ways of doing things that you've been doing for 20, 30 years, lifers, it's hard to change that thing.
Right. Oh yeah.
Well, it's
That's
interesting
real.
though.
Like, that's a great point. You know, yeah, like,
It's interesting, Robertin, because Lee Curtis, like when he was president or head or whatever it is to the board, CHPA, you saw a lot of like synergy when he was there. And he was coming to Burma, and then and some of the team at CHPA was there, and then vice versa. I think that whoever was at that time the president of the RMA was at the CHPA. So there was like at that time, and I don't know if it's still happening. I know Lee was very involved when he was, at that time of at least seeing the landscape and in investing in understanding the differences and the similarities.
right? It's amazing, right? We're all after the same thing, which is occupants, like filling this inventory with quality people. But
Yep.
we're all just looking at it two totally ends of the different. Like we're a football team on two different goal lines, but we're all after the same 50-yarder with, you know, filling that space. That's why I'm very optimistic about it. I know that both spaces are making their way. Will they meet in the middle and be in sync with each other? Maybe, maybe not. I know that we're going to continue to provide what we do and continue to build on that. Even on the short-term rental space, right? I've approached companies and said, listen, we're building this tech. And they were like, oh yeah, we thought about corporate rental a couple of years ago and we decided not to go in that direction anymore. And I'm like back to Mikhail's point, where we've been talking about this a couple of years ago. So even some of the short-term space are just not seeing the value on this side, but somebody will. Somebody's going to create stuff as always, and somebody's going to create it from that side coming this way and it'll mesh because at the end of the day, there's still doors, right? There's still doors. There's still people occupying these doors and they're still paying on the night deal. So we just have to figure out where is the can't even say the even field, man. They're just going to meet because we're in the same industry. Yeah, they're going to meet. We're in the same industry. Just don't know how far along it's going to take. But
Mhm.
while everybody either coming or not coming, we're going to keep growing. So
Well, I mean, ultimately, we're still it's still, the classic David versus Goliath, Goliath being the hotels and the deep pockets that are hotels. And,
Right.
and we're these alternate accommodations, we're all meshed together. And, ultimately the hotels and the spending and all that is, we still can't touch it. And we have a
Yeah.
long ways to go before we could touch it or fight it. And we have to come together.
yeah, and I love that, the alternate accommodation, right? Because we are giving them something alternate to that option. So that's a great tagline. The alternate, because really what it is. Like you don't need to take that, you need to take this. And we both STR and MTR, all three offer the alternate accommodation. So yeah, that's a very good way to simplify it, John. Like
Robertin, this has been awesome, man. I'm glad we can have you on. I'm glad you could join us. I'm excited to hear stories of CHPA. We'll have to catch up and see what's going down.
that.
Really, really excited for you and super excited you're able to join us on this podcast today.
No, thank you guys for having me. And it's actually good to just have a conversation. Great opening with that. Having a talk, man. Saying that's good because it just allows you to be yourself. I love that.
But that's what we do, man. Right? Like that's how we met, what we've done, and we just want to translate that. So definitely thank you for coming on. We'll catch back up with you again sometime soon because there's areas we didn't get to talk about. Like next time we'll really outside of the tagline, we'll bullshit a little more because we got lots of stories to tell and share, and we didn't even get to get into the book, man. And shout out to you and congratulations on the book. And you've done a lot of great things this year. So.
Yeah. No, thank you, man. I appreciate that. Congratulations on your 92nd. What is it? 92nd episode?
92
episode.
Is that what it said? Let me ask you a question then. When you guys did your first one, like, did you see this 92nd episode? Like, or you're just going at it like day by day as you go forward? Like, have you seen it? Did you see where it is today when you first started?
I don't think it's a great question. It's definitely evolved, and we just knew we wanted to have authentic conversations.
Yeah.
And I think that, and we knew that what we didn't want to do, which is what 80% of the podcasts are doing, which is tips and tricks, which is great and it's necessary and there's so much need, and they probably get more listenership overall, general people like, but ours is really focused, it's niche, and it's intimate. And so
Ours is just us. What we wanted it to be was just to be us, right? To be, sitting down and having a conversation like we would at a conference, like after the conference at a bar, right? Like at the table, right? Like imagine this being the after Como set, right? Like at the table when everyone after the conference was done and
I remember that.
It's that feel. It's that thing. That's what we wanted to be able to bring to talk about the amazing people that we know and being able to bring them on and let them tell their stories, because nobody that we know, it was like, I'm going to be in short-term rentals. And you think about the amazing personalities and the backgrounds of all the people within the space. That's what we want to highlight. Talk about the people, talk about the culture. Yes, talk about the business of the day. Talk about new and exciting things that are happening with tech. Talk about what the future looks like. Talk about how far we've come and how far we have to go. That's really what we've wanted to do with this podcast. And so, for us, I think the vision has expanded. But at the end of the day, I think that's always what we've wanted to do, as opposed to tell people how they can get rich within this space. That's another podcast for another day. Yes.
Yep, you guys have done it. And to close out, I guess, say, I always remember the time that we have after the conferences, not the presentation. Those table meetings, those talks, those walks. That's what you remember. So I think that's what you guys are doing here. Thank you. Congratulations.
This podcast is a Hospitality.fm production.